In, so we'll start now. It's 4 minutes after 1, and just move right on. Thank you for coming to the workshop. I've noticed there are a lot of people with a lot of experience here, and that's greatly appreciated by the chair. I kind of just fell into this role nationally because I had done it for like 30 years at my law firm. And I had also represented the insurers of accounting and auditor firms and done errors and omissions insurance work for a decade. So I've seen a lot of mess and dealt with auditors annually forever. But I do not have a CA at all, even contemplating one, because the knowledge they have is so specialized. However, I have figured out how to communicate with CAs and CPAs over the years. We're going to just start out with trying to explain why all IODE chapters need to fill out these lengthy annual reports. And that's because to maintain our charitable status with Revenue Canada, or the CRA as they're known as now, we have to file an annual charitable return. And that charitable return compiles all the information in these individual annual reports and gives a summary of the entire corporate operation across the country. And each of the annual reports from the individual chapters has little funny numbers on it, and they can coincide with the categories in the annual charity return. So I fill in this giant spreadsheet with the information and harass anybody that hasn't filed their report, or Mary Ann does it. And we have to put it in by the end of June each year to maintain our charitable status. And we've successfully maintained it since we were granted it in the early 70s. And it's called a T3010 return. And the information from it is used to put on the, it's called the Charity Directorate. It is on the Revenue Canada or CRA website. When you go into charities, you can find out what everybody's filed. There's a lot of confidential information in there too. So it's not all there, but the basic elements of everything are there for IODE each year. And if you don't file, you run the risk of being in default. What I have done in the past, if I was just missing one chapter, I have filed it anyway because it was accurate for the rest of the chapters. And obviously the one chapter that didn't file didn't have much useful stuff to put in, or they would have filed. Because anybody that's just late, they file. There's only ever been like maybe one small chapter that's thinking about retiring that hasn't filed. And my experience using the annual reports from chapters has been excellent. There's over 95% very accurate compliance across the country, which is really quite amazing given that it's a fairly detailed report. And the provincial treasurers have been of great assistance in dealing with primary chapter difficulties understanding what to put down. So I really appreciate all those efforts that have gone into helping the primary chapters file in each province. It makes our organization successfully comply with our main statutory compliance. Our other one is filing an annual corporate return with a financial statement that's audited. But those are the two things we have to file each year. The first thing on the list is the guidelines for treasurers. And if anybody has any particular questions about this, we could follow up with it. There's two areas I would kind of like to look at briefly. One is the IODE fundraiser projects making donations to other charities. I advised this morning, find my little note. In 2023, on our charity return, we reported that we had $179,171 donated to 51 different registered charities across Canada. And that had to be detailed many of the Western groups that get funds from the public resources out there, like casinos, they have to make donations. But it's totally appropriate to make donations to other charitable organizations, as long as you just don't give it to their general coffers. In other words, it should be a specific project. It doesn't have to be a labeled garden chair anymore. It can be a specific project. If they're doing work with an Indigenous group and, clothing or something, you just designate what it is you want the money to go towards within their organization. And it's much better to give it to a charitable organization than to a non-registered organization, because we have to file a separate report if we start giving money to organizations that aren't trusted by the government to deal with charitable funds. We have to fill out a separate report. So far, I haven't had to do it. But and giving to individuals, of course, is fine. That's the basic charity. The other, excuse me, the other part was the 15% of funds for administration. That's just pure administration. It's not for fundraising projects. So, when you buy a bunch of geraniums and then you resell them, the purchase price that you buy them for is a cost, but it's not an administrative cost. It's part of the fundraising cost. So that's not the number that we're looking for. It's actually the pure administration expenses that are not turned in. And we really have not seen anything in anybody's annual report that indicates any chapter has had any difficulty complying with the 15%. It's much lower. And the reason we set out the 15% is that as an entire organization nationally, because we're just one corporation that's got charitable recognition, we have to comply with Revenue Canada guidelines on charities. So we want to make sure that we give indications to the primary chapters that, try to be as reasonable as possible in your administration expense, but you have to administer what you're doing, and it's understood. There, in fact, has been no indication in any of the annual reports that any chapters sent in that there's been any difficulty complying with this. As I say, the annual reports that I receive with the help of provincial treasurers working on fixing them has been over 95% totally wonderful. So somewhere in our organization, we know how to do it. And I think a lot of the people that know how to do it are here, and they might have some questions. Are there any ones about the guidelines for treasurers that anybody has? The first page of the guidelines are set up on screen share for you to look at it. If you want to look at the second page, Renata can switch it. I think if anybody puts their hand up, it appears, oh, there it is. Hi, Helen.
Hi, I'm just wondering, what is the big difference between the charitable organizations and the not-for-profit?
A not-for-profit doesn't qualify to be a charity. IODE was a not-for-profit from its founding way back when, but it only finally qualified as a charity in the early 1970s, and they had to change their objects and purposes because we used to be a patriotic organization with a kind of charitable sideline. But in the 1968, when we changed our corporate structure to be under the federal act as opposed to a special act of parliament, we changed all our charitable objects and purposes to be able to be a charity, because that was part of the evolution of IODE. Those other groups that are not-for-profits may do really good things, but we have to file a separate form with our CRA report if we give them anything over 5,000. So if it's under 5,000, it's not a problem, but you just have to be careful because they don't have rules they have to comply with at all.
Excuse me.
Yep. Linda?
Hi, Carol. Yeah. What year did you say we were granted a charity designation?
1971, I think it is.
Okay.
We transferred from a special act of parliament corporate entity to under the Canada Corporations Act in 1968. Redid our purposes to include a bit of our past and much of our future. and then continued to try to get charitable status. So they had tried previously, but were too much of a patriotic organization for it to happen. And when we moved into the new Not-for-Profit Act, we continued exactly the 1968 objects and purposes that we had. We didn't change anything because they were already working. They were broad enough to continue. And so that was just basically a continuation of who we were to become compliant under the new act.
Okay, great. Thank
Any
you.
other questions? No?
Do you know what? I don't have a copy of those guidelines. And I noticed there's a paragraph on HST, which is, of course, that, you know, is something that I'm interested in.
Okay, each chapter can get their own HST number.
Yeah, I do. I have all that. But what can you send me a copy of those guidelines?
They were attached to the thing that went out with the meeting.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, it's on that form.
Oh, okay. I didn't open anything from there.
Okay, yeah, the guidelines are there.
Okay.
The current version of the financial statement is there without the updating of which national and provincial projects are defunct or added. And the insurance information and the application for insurance and the agenda, they were all attached to the link that Mary sent out. So you should have it, and if you don't, just email Mary and she'll send you another set.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Karen Barker has her hand up.
Sorry, Karen, I somehow the top's cut off, so I don't see the hands.
Okay. I just have a quick question. Are the war memorials still under Act of Parliament?
They were set up by Act of Parliament. We didn't change anything with war memorial, or we didn't change anything with any fund when we did the charitable thing.
So they're still under the Act of, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, they still have the first war memorial fund still has very Act of Parliament guidelines. The second one has lesser ones, but they're definitely governed by the information that's in the current constitution. In one of the parts, that's the equivalent of the old Part C of the 2004 one.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
It's just continued there. Okay. Any further questions on treasurer's guidelines? I mean, you can ask later if you think of something.
Well, I'm just putting up my hand. I'm supposed to push a button, am I?
Oh yeah, there's a little clicker, but you can put your hand up. I can see you right now. If you need to.
Okay, well, like I said, it's I do have a question about the HST. How often do you have to register me as someone that's qualified to apply for a rebate? Because I've run across it in October of one year where Dana hadn't put me on the list, and so therefore I couldn't apply.
Yeah, that's unusual because usually we check off indefinitely so that it only changes when the person changes. So we don't do any annual filing of a list. We just do changes.
So don't.
If there's some problem, get in contact with the national office and I'll see what's on the website. And if you're not there somehow.
Okay. You don't know if I'm there or not, eh?
Not right now, no. I would go on the website and check. Would you like me to check?
Sure.
Okay.
And then you can let me know.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna do it again at the end of the year, and so I don't want to have a glitch.
Yeah, I remember during COVID there was a glitch, but everything was glitching.
Yes, that's right. It was during COVID.
Yeah, because I remember Dana telling me that she had done an application on your behalf for your chapter because yours didn't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I want to know. I thought it was like maybe every 2 years or every 3 years just to update the person, but
no.
Okay.
No, we could try to do it the simple way.
Right.
Okay, so the next item is the actual financial statement that you have to put up with every year. It has, I I think we try to give fulsome instructions. Whether they are or not is another issue. The first page, which is up now, is one that's been very nicely filled up by almost 100% of the chapters that file. And it's a key information source of good stuff. Currently, there used to be a separate report for gaming accounts, but now the supplementary report is at the end of the financial report. So you just continue and do it if you have lotteries, thrift shops, whatever, anything that qualifies for that. Rather than having a separate return, it's all in one now. On the second page, I don't think there should be any questions about the first page. The second page is where the president and treasurer have to sign off at the top. And then we go down into the details of the where the revenue is basically coming from. And to clarify, in the interest and income, investment income line 9, I often get the full value of a GIC you've redeemed. So instead of saying $35.89 for the actual income and interest, I get $1,039.59. So the 1,000 shouldn't be there, just the actual income that's earned that year. And in the line 14, these items are basically information items, but it's for other, just to identify other revenue. And we don't add, like if you redeem a GIC that's $5,000, the $5,000 isn't new income, it's old income. But most of the stuff that's put in here is totally recognizable when I go through the form, so I don't put it in the wrong category. And it's good information for us to know what we're doing. And it's good information for national investments that you have. Are there any questions about lines 1 to 16?
Nope.
Okay. Next page is, this is the page that's still being revised because funds get discontinued and new ones get started. So for instance, this year in the national chapter funds, 125th Celebration Fund and Violet Downey Book Award Fund will both be added because we are receiving donations for those two. And down below, Card Ontario is going to be deleted because Card has now been given their ultimate gift and final gift of money from the Toronto Legacy Fund. So we're no longer accepting money on their behalf. I mean, members can donate directly, but not through IODE. So if you know of any fund that's listed there that's no longer in existence, or any fund that needs to be added, just email Mary and we'll make sure that it happens. Any questions about this page? Excuse me. On the next page, you'll notice that there's a total for the first 3 categories, A, B, and C. That's because on the charity return, they want to know bursaries and scholarship information separately. So we have to ask separate questions, and that's why it's broken out separately. And while we're on bursaries and scholarships, I mean, at one time, CRA didn't require T4As to be issued to recipients, but now they do require T4As to be issued. National will do it on your behalf, and but it only applies to bursaries and scholarships, $500 and over. So even though the Income Tax Act doesn't set it out, that's their administrative interpretation of it. So if your scholarship's 500 and under, no T4A is required. If it's over 500, then you need to request a T4A from the national office. And what you need is the name, the address, and ideally the social insurance number. You can send it in. We delete it promptly from our records and don't let it go to the cloud. and store it on a thumb drive until we don't need it any longer, so that we protect the privacy information. Primary chapter expenses. This is where the 15% administration expenses go. And the only unusual part here is that there's two categories, 4840, which is line 50, and line 53, which is 48, not that one, sorry, 54, line 4890. And the first one, the 50, is just your usual administrative costs of postage and office supplies and basic equipment. The line 54, which describes itself as costs and supplies, is really assets that your chapters purchased. And most primary chapters don't purchase assets unless they have a thrift shop where they need to have something or the other, like maybe racks or whatever, stuff like that. So most chapters won't report anything in line 54, but they'll report whatever they spend on just administrative supplies in line 50. And sometimes line 50 is empty and line 50, whatever it is, I just lost it again, 4 has got a number in it, but I know that the number in 54, which is like $29.50, didn't purchase any asset. So I just put it in the proper line. But I thought maybe people wondered what the difference was. Any questions about this page? Helen?
Often we are giving money to the school board to give to students as bursaries, so we don't need a T4A there. But if we give the student direct payment, like writing a check out, then that's when you need a T4A?
Yeah, for anything over $500.
Right. Now, if that student, if you don't know the student's address, how do you give it to them?
How'd you give it to them in the first place?
At the awards ceremony.
Oh, well, you have to ask for it.
Okay.
And ideally the social insurance number too, but we can issue a T4 without the social insurance number, but it's ideal with it.
Okay.
Just that some
Good.
students, like some young students, their parents say you can't give it out at all. So, yeah.
Mhm.
And it doesn't apply to scholarships within secondary school. It's just university, college level and up.
Ah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions on page that's up there now? If not, we'll move on to the next one, which starts with line 70. In the donations to other registered charities, it's really great if, in addition to the name of the charity, you provide this charitable registration number, because otherwise I have to look it up. But, it's doable. And sometimes when there's no charitable registration number, in fact, the organization is not a charity. So it doesn't belong in that category, and I just transfer it back to donations to other sources. And if it's an amount under 5,000, I don't have to fill out any fancy form. But that's where the report of that $179,000 came from that we reported last year. The summary at the bottom is a very key part of the report in terms of determining whether the accuracy is there. And the do not include flower fund refers to tea funds, slush funds, anything that your chapter uses to send, plants and flowers and get well cards and whatever to members, because we're not supposed to spend any donated funds for that purpose at all. But if at the end of the year, out of that fund, you actually take whatever's left over and put it into your regular charitable funds, it is reportable then. If you're not going to use it as a slush fund or tea fund anymore. Are there any questions on the page that starts with number 70?
Do we have to ask if an organization is a charitable organization in order to include it in that list?
Yeah, most of them will tell you they're a charitable organization, but yes, you have to well, you don't have to ask them. I mean, if you know they're a registered charity, you just have to put down the name of the charity and the registration number, which is available on the CRA website in the charity section.
Yeah.
But if it's not a charity, it shouldn't be in this section. It should be in the other donations section in wherever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next page is the one that has all our expenses on it. No, it isn't. That's the previous page. The reviewer. Questions came up this morning about the reviewer and who they can be related to and whether they can be from another chapter. Yes, a reviewer can be a member of another chapter with the requisite experience in doing financial matters. Sometimes some chapters have their reviews done by the treasurer of another chapter. And it can be a relative of anybody in your chapter other than the president and the treasurer. Then the final part here is the section for if your chapter has lotteries, draws, gambling fund activities, or thrift shops, and you fill in the information on that part of your activities there. And you can attach, I mean, for the thrift shops, I often get attached the financial statement at year end for the thrift shop with, what the proceeds were and how much they kept in the account at the end of the year to finance the organization.
So Carol,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
is that just if like we have ticket sales where we'll sell tickets on an item, a basket, an item, is that go under that charitable under this?
No, not if you're doing one that has to be registered for municipality, it goes in here. But if you're
Yeah.
just doing one of those
Okay.
internal ones that you have, that doesn't. That's
No, okay, so
ordinary-
we
that's
actually
just
go
ordinary
we go and
funds.
get a permit. We get a permit
Yeah,
to actually license or whatever permit to run the sell tickets. So that would go in here,
that
right?
would go in here. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Good to know.
And if anything comes up when you're actually trying to complete these reports, feel free to contact your provincial treasurer or directly to the national office, and we'll provide whatever help we can, because we don't want people to get sick doing these horrible reports. Because they are key to our existence. One of those unfortunate things. Is there any further questions on the annual return?
The Carol,
Yeah.
there's a page here on, oh gosh, where's it fall? It falls under the supplementary financial statement.
Yeah.
And it says bank account on the second page of that, I guess, the bank account and branch of account. You don't have to keep money that you raised from selling tickets or whatever in a separate account, do you?
No, not at all. No, but it's often
Okay,
thrift
good.
shops have a separate account. And
Okay, yeah.
it's just
All
so we
right.
have information on where the various bank accounts are in case we have to find the money sometime or the other. It can
All
happen.
right. It can.
Yeah.
Aileen has a question,
Aileen?
and you've put yourself on mute, Aileen.
Sorry, I can't find the raise hand button here. I find reactions, but I don't see a raised hand. So I'm just inquiring about the spreadsheet for the supplementary financial statement. Do you have a sample, an example of that I can have a look at in terms of setting up an Excel sheet for a lottery?
There, I don't have it in front. I only have the Word versions in front of me, but there is a version that has an Excel spreadsheet as part of it that Mary puts on the website.
Okay, thank you.
And she's just in the process of doing that stuff.
I think Linda Reed has a
Hi,
question.
Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Carol. Thrift stores we used to put on page, well, I don't know what page it is, but number 12, net profit from related business. And then we used to attach, the income and outcome and all that. So we don't use that anymore and we go to the supplementary for thrift stores.
What I was finding is I had received no information whatsoever except the one line on the beginning pages on income from thrift stores. So that's why it was added, because there's like a whole bunch of issues there and it's good to know where they are. And it was good when we got the national insurance to cover thrift stores for the legal liability too. So that's why it's separate. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Typically the ones that did report sent copies of the financial statement for the thrift stores along with it, but some of them sent absolutely nothing except for one number. And there's not, we don't have a ton of them left because it's so expensive to run thrift stores in many communities these days.
Okay, thank you.
But that's why it's now there in addition to where it was before.
Perfect, thanks.
I included the insurance section just because we don't have a broad base of understanding in the insurance issues. The IODE policy through cooperators, which insures all of IODE as an organization, and to which the $8 per person insurance administrative amount goes to, is underwrites IODE and its members and any volunteers that work with its members for any legal liability that arises out of IODE operations. And that's everything from from meetings to fundraisers to community drop-in centers. Whatever you're doing as an activity, it covers your liability. We, in fact, have never had to use our legal liability. We've had one reported potential claim in the years that I've been within IODE. And we recently increased the coverage from 3 million to 5 million because a lot of places which were asking for certificates of insurance with their organization added to our policy as an additional insured with respect to the IODE event wanted 5 million and not 3 million. And that's part of what was involved in the amount going up, from $6 to $8. Now, for your ordinary monthly meetings, mall displays, and whatever, bus tours, you don't need to ask for a certificate of insurance. You only need to ask for one if the entity with which you're dealing for the fundraiser requests a certificate of insurance. We provide it. And some of them will request being added as an additional insured on our policy with respect to the event. So you're all covered automatically, as are your volunteers in the thrift shops, for legal liability, for personal injury to other parties, and for property damage to other parties. There's an attached form here too on how you apply for the insurance certificate. And it's there so that you can fill in the blanks and we can figure out whether we need to ask any more questions, basically, because some of them are very straightforward and some of them aren't, and some of them require more work than others do. And that's why we ask for some lead time in applying for this certificate, because sometimes our policy doesn't even cover whatever's going on. which happened once in an Ottawa fundraiser, but only once has it happened in the time that we've been with cooperators. And if you have any questions about the insurance process and coverage, feel free to contact the national office. But with any luck, sorry?
Oh, this is. Who was calling it? Hi, I've got a question.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so the thrift shop that we have in Godrich, I carry my own liability.
Well, the policy before the one with cooperators didn't cover any thrift shops.
Okay.
But the current one does. So unless your landlord asks for some kind of special insurance that goes beyond third-party liability insurance for people that come into the shop or volunteers that have injuries or, you know, property damage.
No, that's all he's asking for is liability. But I also, because we have assets,
Well,
okay.
you have to insure your own assets for their property, like their property insurance.
Okay, so I've got it insured. But if I can reduce my annual cost of $600
sure,
on insurance by using your liability,
yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah, that's how it works. That was one of the advantages that we discovered when we switched from our previous liability insurer to our current one, and we did that. Well, we did that a number of years ago, but
okay, so nobody told me that. So how do I get a copy of?
You go on the national website.
Okay.
And you go into member resources, and then under officers, there's a treasurer's page, and it has all the stuff that treasurers fill in, all the different forms, and it includes the insurance coverage application there. And the actual questionnaire, which I'm not sure is there, is included with the email I sent out it was sent out by Mary for this meeting. So
okay.
the one page FAQ, but this page does indicate the coverage for including thrift shops someplace here.
Yeah, because it said that. So that would be great.
Yeah. Oh, here. Yeah. Question towards the bottom. Is there liability coverage for a claim if a customer volunteer is injured in thrift shops?
Yeah.
The liability insurance would apply if a customer volunteer is injured in a thrift shop location and the IODE chapter is found liable.
And what about if it was a customer?
A who?
A customer.
Oh yeah, it's a customer or a volunteer.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's if they're injured or if they're somehow their property gets damaged too. Yeah.
Okay. Gosh. Okay, that's good news.
Well, it gives a little bit more value to the $8 a member you have to pay.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Carol,
yes.
Does the insurance still cover transportation to and from events for IODE members?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a bus tour, it covers the people on the bus, but not going and coming from IODE meetings. Any further questions? If anybody doesn't already have a HST rebate number, you can apply for it.
Okay. Carol, I'm just wondering, if you meet in a location, an IODE meeting, we meet in a location and we're going somewhere else, are we covered at that point or no?
Wherever you're meeting, it's basically the physical premises where you're having your meeting or your event.
Yeah, okay. So, but if we leave there to go on a tour or to go then we're covered, right?
If you're like,
Or
if
are we not?
one of your events is like an IODE bus tour, it's not getting on like a TT
Yeah.
bus, something like.
Yeah, okay. I hear what you're saying. Got it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else you can think of?
I'm sorry to ask this, but who is Mary?
Any question works. What? Sorry?
Who is Mary?
Oh, Mary Gann is the office administrator at the IODE National Office.
Okay.
She's a full-time.
So where's Renata?
Who? Renata?
Yeah.
Renata's a national officer, and she's a volunteer like all the national officers, and she's right there on screen. She says IODE Canada. She's organizing the IT for this session.
Okay, she's national. All right.
And she's also provincial, though. She's busy in Ontario as well, but
Yeah. Yeah, she's been helpful over the years. Okay.
oh yeah. And I mean, all provincial treasurers have been so helpful over the years too. It's great. So as I say, the completeness and accuracy rate exceeds 95%, which is exceptional and very good.
That's because we've all got Excel.
Yeah, well, I can feel the version of Excel I used for the spreadsheet was set up by Linda Dennis back in the day. And I still use it when I have to put the formula in. I go to another line and say, okay, what was that formula? Oh yeah, that I just do formula in. I have a consultant on the side called my daughter, but I prefer not to call her if I don't have to.
Oh my God.
Well, nothing else. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure having you here and being able to pass on little bits if it's possible at all.
Yeah,
And-
you've been a great help to me.
And
So thank you.
anything that can be done to assist in further understanding. And I didn't check to see if I have any chat questions. I don't think I do, but I did.
No, there's no chats. These are very verbal ladies today.
Very good. I did receive. I did receive one question which might be useful for other members that are here today. And the question was, our chapter held a food drive at a local food bank and some people donated cash. Should the cash be deposited into the chapter bank account and then a check written to the food bank, or just give the cash directly to the food bank? And how would you record it year-end report? The cash should go into your account, and anybody that donates over $20 or $20 and over is entitled to a tax receipt if they want one. Otherwise, it goes into that kind of second line in donated funds on the financial report, the funds without tax receipts, but it can go in either category. And then your chapter should issue a check to the food bank because it's part of the fundraising for your event. Yeah, so I said if they get a tax receipt, that it's in one category at the page 1 of the report. If it's in no tax receipt request, it goes in the other category.
Eileen Reed has a question.
Eileen?
Carol, I'm just wondering, where do we find out whether we have an HST number for a chapter?
I'll make a note and check.
It's for the Val Griffiths chapter. I know Trillium has one.
I'll check to see what's there and let you know.
Thank you. One other question, how many years back can you apply for HST? Is
4.
there a 4?
And you do have to do it 6 months, 6-month intervals. They rejected one of the Down East chapters that filed a year at a time.
Yeah.
No, I was just checking for the other questions.
Karen Barker also has her hand up.
Okay, Karen?
I was just wondering, when a chapter is retiring and they have a GST number, do they let you know to cancel it, or do they cancel it, or?
No, they can't cancel it. There's a lot of defunct numbers on our website, but they haven't got anything to claim. So,
Okay, so
but
it doesn't really
what
matter.
I'm doing is reassigning the numbers actually, because it doesn't make any sense to open up new numbers. It just change the name of the chapter and the contact person and everything.
Mm-hmm. But should they maybe contact you with disband when they disband, or do you know?
I know because it comes to national eventually, and
Okay.
then it usually gets to national shortly after it's gone to provincial. So. Oh, the other question was, can a chapter donate to a fund that is set up to support a community? Example, Jasper Community Fund set up by the Red Cross to assist Jasper. And the answer is yes. And I think we did this question. A member from another chapter can review an annual financial report. And a relative not of the president or treasurer.
That's only at the primary level, right?
Right, at the primary level, because at the provincial level,
Yeah.
you have to have some third party prepare the financial statement. In the case of smaller provinces, we no longer insist that they pay audit fees because they were totally disproportionate with the amount of the money involved. So they have a waiver. But and if the other provincial chapters have a problem, they can contact the national office and explain what the problem is. Because it's basically for large amounts of money, we want to have some control and ideally reports in accordance with GAAP or whatever it's called for not-for-profits. But for primary chapters, it's just got to be somebody that's comfortable looking at your bank statements and the report that you put together to see if they kind of match. And so somebody with some financial business experience, but they don't have to have been like a corporate employee of that. They can be somebody that's just experienced.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Those were the only questions I had sent in. Oh, one of the questions that came up this morning was non-cash donations. And because of the difficulty in valuing non-cash donations, unless it's a truly exceptional case, that we had one in Ontario where antique books were donated and the chapter wanted to accept the books and then have them available to the community. And in that case, we did allow a non-cash donation, but they had to do have a third party appraisal with a recognized appraiser do it, which is, going to a fair amount of effort. For non-cash donations, what we do is we ask the chapter to buy whatever's donated and then the person to donate the cash back, and then it's a cash donation. And that
makes sense.
Keeps it very straightforward, because we really don't want to get into arguments with either CRA or with our people making donations to us over the value of what they have. And you can establish, when you do the purchase of the non-cash donation, the two of you that are dealing with it can establish the value, because that's what the tax receipt is going to be. But if it's ridiculous, don't go for it. Like, don't pay $1,000 for 2 China dolls.
No.
It sounds like some kind of a scam. I don't know.
They actually, you would, like, if I were buying a quilt from somebody who was donating a quilt for, and let's say I gave them, $200 for the quilt, which is probably
it's probably reasonable.
Cheap, but anyway, if I gave them $200, I have to actually physically write them a check for $200, right, to clear the account, and they have to pay
and
me
have a little
back.
handwritten invoice too, ideally, just a little thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
Okay,
they
so
give
it's
you
actually
back the
got
check
clear.
and you give them a
Yeah,
tax,
it's got-
you apply for a tax receipt. Yeah.
Yeah, and they give that way it clears the account, you see it, and then you see them put it back in the account, right? So,
Yeah, and then we don't have
okay.
to file this supplementary report with CRA, which is called as something or the other. I did write it down. A separate Schedule 5 is what it's called, non-cash gift.
So, yeah, so
Then
if
for-
you couldn't use that expense, like if they wrote me an invoice for $200 for the quilt, I couldn't use that as a cost of fundraising? Or was that where it would go under?
Oh, where it just goes as a regular donation at the beginning,
Oh, okay.
and then
Yeah, that's true because the
whatever
check.
it
Okay.
is, you report separately with whatever the fundraising thing is. If you have it for a silent fund, it gets double
Yeah.
returns then, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
One
Sounds
more
good.
question for me.
And for non-qualified donees, that means when you give money to organizations that aren't charities, for amounts excess of $5,000, we have to do a fancy report for CRA too, because they really don't like money. It's part of the money laundering, frankly. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to worry about money laundering in Nova Scotia.
Excuse me.
okay.
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Linda?
One last thing. How many years do I have to keep all my receipts and my paraphernalia that goes with being the treasurer of a shop?
For a shop, if you have like contracts for equipment and stuff like that, we recommend 10. But for just ordinary IODE chapters that don't buy any kind of asset-y type things, 7's fine.
7. Okay. That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have to go, but it's been
Okay.
very informative, Carol. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Elaine, you had another question?
Yeah, we used to be able to, when we were giving a check to somebody in our chapter for something, they used to be able to sign it back to us, but the bank that I belong to will not do that anymore.
No, we don't do that anymore either. So
Third party. Okay.
it's separate checks to and from.
Okay.
And for national officers, they basically can record their travel expenses and then an accommodation. They put in the request, it's reimbursed, and then they donate a separate amount, slightly different than the original amount, actually. A little bit higher, not lower. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And if there's anything that comes up in the future, don't hesitate to call. There's no such thing as a bad question. It all is for good purposes. Sometimes it may be a question that nobody's even thought of that's worthwhile sharing with other people.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Thank you, Carol. Good one.